a pretty hefty program, and I don't want to get off schedule so that we can get every speaker their opportunity to speak and share the information that's why you're here. First of all, my name is Liliana Torres, and I manage the South Pasadena Senior Center. I've been there for over 30 years, so I have a little bit of experience. But more importantly, I too was a caregiver for my parents, and that and those experiences kind of helped spearhead this, as well as Alexandria Levitt is the chair of the Senior Commission, and we had been talking about wanting to bring this to the community to help all of you go through what we went through and perhaps make it a little less painful and bring you resources that at some point are going to help you make decisions for your loved one. After each panelist speaks, we're trying to allow about 10 minutes so that each one gets their opportunity. We'll allow an opportunity for questions after that, and then there'll be an opportunity for you to visit with each exhibitor and get some materials. We try to include everything in the bags, but there's additional information out there that some of them are providing. I want to thank Girl Friday for providing the bags, and the Senior Citizens Foundation, that they'll be speaking a little bit. Their sole purpose is to raise funds for the senior center that aren't covered, for expenses that are not covered under the city's general fund. And they are providing the refreshments. They have a lovely table back there. And I'd like to, let's see how many senior commissioners are here. Cindy Knight, could you stand for a second just so you know you're on? Cindy Knight, Julie Abagadis, Herb Schoen, let's see, Bob Vanderwall here? Not yet. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'd like to introduce Alexandria Levitt, Chair of the Senior Commission, and she'll help us moderate all our wonderful speakers tonight. Thank you. Okay. Before she talks, I want to tell you a story. I have so many stories that kind of help you possibly relate to experiences as you think about how am I going to help my parent. And this is one of my most recent ones. One of our center members came to me kind of like a deer in headlights, telling me that she had just gotten word that she had breast cancer and really was just trying to, how do I deal with this? And she's probably in her late 70s and just was completely lost. And I, having gone through that, I was able to help her at least feel a little comfortable what was coming. But more importantly, she was just kind of freaked out about, once she came home from her surgery, who would care for her. And so I was trying to get her some information on some agencies, and then I asked if she had family. And she said to me, well, I have 2 sons and they live in the area. And I asked, well, can't they help you when you come home from the hospital? And she said, no, they're busy. And I said, oh, interesting, they're busy. I said, oh, they have families? No, they're all single. Okay, so that really got my blood pressure going. And I'm like, okay, don't react. And she said one son that lives closest to her, she asked if she could stay for a week, just so she could handle what comes after you have a mastectomy. And you have to have drains cleaned and all this craziness. And the son told, no, my girlfriend, we just moved in together and it will be an inconvenience. Yeah, talk about breaking your heart. And so I've been trying to help her, connect her for services, but those are things that happen all the time, and we want to try to help those that, even if they have family, that we can provide some resources to help make some of these ugly experiences a little easier, whether it's that or facing any type of dementia or serious illness or just coping with aging. It's not easy. So, without any more stories for the moment, I'm going to turn over Alexandria. Thank you.
Thanks, Lily. So Lily must deal with a zillion stories like that all the time, and she is a quiet force helping seniors in this town and has been for a long time. But I wanted her to share that story with you because I think it just, obviously you guys aren't like that terrible son because you're here, but it also shows that we just don't know sometimes what people are going through, they don't know. Obviously this woman did not know what was coming at her, and she didn't have the words to tell her son, he didn't know what to ask. So that's one of the reasons we do this presentation in the evening for you all, so that after work you can come and hopefully get connected to some resources and answers for you, your friends, family, whoever. So our first speakers tonight are Mary and Ed Turnan. They are founders of Silverwise. Mary is well known in the local area for her work as the director of pastoral care at Holy Family Church here in South Pass. As a financial advisor who helps clients with a range of retirement issues, they will address the topic of caregiver wellness.
Thank you, Alexandria, and thank you all for being here this evening. These are such important topics, and we are happy to have the chance to share some of our experiences with you. First, let me give you some background. Ed and I started Silverwise to expand the discussion around aging to include more of the family. In almost 30 years of working for the church, I have learned that the aging journey is a family matter. Caring for our parents is a big job. It impacts us all a lot in different ways. It changes our routines and influences our relationships with our siblings and with our children, as well as our parents. As caregivers, we focus our energy and concern on our aging loved ones. Getting them the help and support that they need is job number one. Our message today is that we have to see the forest through the trees. We have to take care of ourselves if we're going to take care of mom or dad. And we have to be mindful of the experiences of our other family members, all of whom are involved in some degree. My experience has taught me that there are two goals for families dealing with our aging journey. The first is to preserve the dignity of our aging loved one. The second, and just as important, is to preserve the family harmony throughout the process. I have seen misunderstandings and hurt feelings, and sometimes brothers and sisters going their separate ways. On the other hand, I've also seen families grow closer by working together and communicating openly. Every family situation is different, but we know that there are some things that we can do to meet the challenges and keep the peace. Ed?
Thank you. So I'm always hard to follow my lovely wife. You can be confident that I'm going to be straight with you today because both my wife and my mother are here. So I'm not going to say anything to you that I wouldn't say in front of them. So you know that. And I'm also really sensitive to the fact that we don't have much time because there's a bunch of other really good speakers here tonight that we want to get to. So when Mary and I were preparing for this, we said, what can we do that's like real concise and useful information can we pass along? And we thought back to all the times over the last 30 years that we've kind of debriefed after work around our dinner table. And what are some, when we did that, we talk about the families we were helping, me more on the financial side and Mary on the kind of spiritual guidance side. And we wondered if there were any themes, kind of high-level overarching threads that ran through all the unique family experiences. Lo and behold, we came up with 4. And what we did so that, number one, I would remember it, and maybe you will too, is we are going to use the word CARE as an acronym to talk about the 4 big picture themes that maybe you can keep in mind as you start your journey as a caregiver. So CARE, C-A-R-E. C is for control, A is for acceptance, R, recognition, and E, engagement. Now, I do have some handouts in the back, so you don't have to write this all down if you don't want to. The first one, control, is the most important one, I think, and it's the one that in our conversations would come up across every family situation just about, and in a lot of different ways. And what we mean by that is, when we think of what our aging loved one is going through as their journey begins, is really can be summed up a lot of times as it's a loss of control. And that's a really deep, deep thing if you think about it. Our ability to control our own destiny, it speaks a lot to our self-worth, our sense of independence, And so one of the things we would talk about a lot is, why is mom acting this way? Or why am I getting this reaction from dad? And with the advice we would give to families, if you can back up and say, how is the loss of control playing in here? It'll give you a little bit of insight that maybe give you some ideas of maybe how to handle that situation. So that's the most important one. The other thing about control is, and a lot of the stuff that Mary's learned over the years is, you can have the same situation and it can kind of go one way or the opposite way. You never know. So this sense of control oftentimes manifests itself in mom or dad doubling down and trying to control everything. We've had that experience, yes? Or the other way, I don't care, do whatever you want, I don't care anymore. So, but underneath that, both of those reactions is the sense of control. Also keep in mind that you as a caregiver, you're sensing a loss of control as well. You're not in control of your own life as much as you were before. So that's a big theme for me. That control is something that we agreed it's throughout everything. Acceptance I won't spend as much time on. That's really kind of like the message is get on with it. Like a lot of things in life, us baby boomer caregivers, we probably should have seen this coming, but we're not as ready as we should have been. Now it's here, okay? The sooner you accept the fact that your parent needs help, it's not going to go away. It's not going to get easier. The way this path goes is not something happens, mom needs help, that's over. That's not how it works. The sooner you accept that, the easier it's going to go. So it's proactive versus reactive. Just embrace it and it'll go better for everybody, right? Recognition, frankly, we're kind of forcing some of these in so they fit in the word care, right? So we're trying to work this acronym as best we can. Recognition is a little bit about, this is something that Mary picks up on all the time, is you have to be aware of changes in your parents' needs. The steady state doesn't last for very long. And we see, sometimes we've seen cases over the years where it's like, well, move mom out of the family house into an independent living apartment. It's much easier for everything. Great. It's not how it works. You have to stay in touch. You got to keep your eyes on what's going on with mom and how her needs are changing. And the other thing is recognize that everyone else in your family is going through this situation, but not exactly the same way you are. So you need to honor the differences in other people's experiences. Your sibling relationships, especially important there. Your spouse, okay, mother-in-law, caring for mother-in-law is different than caring for mother. Be sensitive to that, right? The last one I'd say about that, recognize that this is going to happen to you, most likely. The way we age in this country is changing. It's a gradual process. It lasts a lot longer than it used to. You're going to need help for a lot longer. What are you doing to plan for your own aging? And lastly, engagement. I would say get involved. Your parent needs an advocate. The healthcare system is a quagmire. They can't do it alone. Engage with your siblings, your other loved ones, your spouse. Err on the side of TMI instead of not enough information. Keep those lines of communication open. And lastly, don't go it alone. There are resources out there, there are support groups. As Mary said, if you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of your parent. So, don't be afraid to ask for help and take care of yourself. So those are the points we wanted to make. I know I probably ran a little bit over, I'm sorry, but that's it for us. Thanks.
That was super. So I just wonder, of the people sitting here tonight, how many of you consider yourselves caregivers? Show of hands. All right. So, if you get some groceries for somebody, if you pay a bill, there are a million ways that we are caregivers for people in our lives, and I have a feeling all of you are in some way. It's just a little scary to say you are a caregiver because then you feel like, it's a big responsibility. So thank you very much, Mary and Ed. Our next speaker is Solani Gardner. She is a mental health clinician with Heritage Clinics. Where is she? Oh, here she is. Okay, sorry. I'm looking so far for you. Heritage Clinics has a few branches, but there's one in Pasadena. I did my internship there and I was getting my master's in gerontology at USC. And what's really wonderful about it is it's a mental health clinic strictly for older adults. So they are really tuned in to critical issues that affect this population. So welcome, Solani.
me, and it's an honor to be here this evening. So I specialize in hoarding disorder. So the H word, hoarding. And I'm seeing some eyes, I'm seeing some laughter a little bit. Hoarding disorder is a diagnosable mental illness. So instead of using the word hoarding, I'm gonna say extra stuff. Because we can really relate to having extra stuff. But the difference is how much extra stuff equates to hoarding disorder. So some of us may have some loved ones that have, lots of clothes or magazines, and you can put the pile over here, and it's not really blocking any pathways in your home. It's not a fire hazard. That's just most likely just extra stuff. But when you have someone that has magazines, newspapers, that's like up to almost the ceiling in their home, they have piles of clothes. I've worked with people that had junk mail just in one bedroom full of junk mail on the bed. That's a fire hazard. There are people that have, I'll just use the H word, hoarding animals, where there's cats, there's dogs. They may have other animals. I've known of someone that had a lot of snakes. But if you cannot care for those animals, let's say you're caring for those animals more than you care for yourself, where you're on a limited budget. Most of the people that we work with at Heritage Clinic are on Social Security, some are homeless, just very limited income. So if you are a person or know of a loved one that will spend most of their money to care for the animal, taking the animal to the vet and not paying for their food or paying for their electricity to be on or their gas to be on, and their home is full of feces and fleas and maybe other rodents in the home, that causes a hazard for that person. And the hoarding disorder, next to cluttering or excessive stuff, it debilitates the person. So we may know of someone that has a lot of stuff, more stuff than they should have, and they isolate. I know I have a relative that inherited homes from different relatives. She's 89 now. So she inherited from 4 or 5 different relatives that had passed away. So sometimes hoarding disorder can develop by inheriting property, inheriting clothing, inheriting books. But hoarding also can be traumatic. It can be a trigger for someone. So let's say someone loses their spouse, which is traumatic in itself. But it's really difficult for them to maybe give away some of the clothing of the spouse that they lost, or to donate it. And the emotions that they have for that loved one is real, but it's really difficult to not, I don't like using the word let it go, but to process those feelings, and then it'll just continue to hoard more things because it has a feeling for them. It brings life to some of them, and it becomes to the point to where it debilitates them, where they are isolating from their loved ones. Does anyone in here have anyone that kind of meets that criteria, or that you've known of someone and or yourself? And I'm like, it's funny, we can all admit it, this is a safe place. This is a safe place. Most people, we have a little extra this or a little extra that. But when it comes to hoarding disorder, that's when your life is totally in a disarray. Your relationships with your loved ones are estranged. The person gets really angry, argumentative. They want to, argue. No, you can't take my stuff. And you have a loving family member that wants to help, and they don't know how to help. They just, well, you got to get all your stuff out of here. But you can't do that because that causes a person significant distress, anxiety, depression, and those two mental illnesses are connected with hoarding disorder as well, because it's a compulsive behavior that's related to the hoarding. So whatever the trauma may have been, it's connected to that. And so at Heritage Clinic, I am the trainer for hoarding disorder. And I also work with the Department of Mental Health in training individuals regarding hoarding disorder, specifically with individuals 55 and older. And I also work with the caregivers to give the caregivers an idea on how to approach their loved one in a gentle, loving way, but still allowing the person to have empowerment, to let them make the decision. Because that individual has to be at a place to where they want to start to decrease some of their stuff. It's personal for me because I've had a family member that hoards, and I had other family members that hoarded as well. So I really wanted to understand why. Why is this in my family? And I've taken it to the level to where I'm able to educate people, not just from my personal experience, but as a clinical professional as well. So I will be in the back with Sean Hertz. We have a table for Heritage Clinic if anyone would like my card and have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Solani. That's really appreciated. I think we all know someone who's in that situation, and it's nice to know there's resources and that it's around mental health. So being pragmatic and saying, let's just clean it up is not always gonna work. Our next speaker tonight is Victor Alcala. He is a geriatric care manager. They also call themselves aging life care professionals. He got his Master of Science in Gerontology at USC, as I did. So he's gonna talk about what he does, but for those of you who are saying, geriatric care manager, what is that? He will explain that, but what's really nice to know about what he does is that this is a service that's provided all over the country. So if you have a relative in New York who's struggling, this is a directory that you can look up online and connect to a professional in that part of the country to help you out. So Victor, come on up.
Thanks so much, Alexander. Thanks so much for bringing me here tonight. It's really an honor to be able to address all of you, to be able to share a little bit of my work with you and share my experiences with you, and hopefully you can gain something from it as well. So in talking to your parents, really the first thing that you want to do, you really want to plan ahead. And having conversations with your parents about this sort of stuff, about care, about end-of-life issues, is often really difficult. I've seen different people present the talk, but not that one, the one that we all have when we're like 9 and 10 years old. This is the one that you end up having much later in your life. But still, the consequences are just as significant. Really what you want to do is you want to try to ask questions. You want to really try to learn from the older adult, learn from your parents. What is it that they want out of certain situations? When something happens, what would you like me to do? When something happens, who should I call? What do you want me to do in this situation? And really what you want to do is you want to look for different opportunities to be able to have those conversations. And those opportunities come up in a lot of different forms. Sometimes the illness of another family member, the illness of a very close friend, had a certain set of circumstances, maybe something happened, something changed. Hey Mom, well, you know, if that same thing happened to you, what would you want me to do? What would you expect from me? What would you hope to be able to do or accomplish at that point if that exact same thing happened to you? When others get sick, or if there's a minor setback, maybe a fall that didn't result in an injury. And Mom, that really scared me. It probably scared you as well. What do you think we should do? What do you think we should change so this doesn't happen again? Or next time if this happens and you know you do fall and really injure yourself, what should we do? What do we have any options? Do we have anybody that we could call or anything else that any other resources that we can look at? I want to tell you a little story about a older adult and her 3 daughters. The real happy family for most of their lives. At one point in time, the family started to kind of grow apart. Changes started to happen within the family. I'm a social worker as well, so we always talk about the dynamics of the family, and I like to put it that way as opposed to family dynamics. Because somebody says the term family dynamics and you think, oh, they have family dynamics. No, all families have dynamics, have different, all families have dynamics that are at work within that family. And part of my role as a social worker is to go in and try to figure out, okay, what are those dynamics and how do I access those dynamics to be able to help support this family a little bit better. So anyways, this family of 3 daughters, at one point they just weren't talking to each other. And all of this started to happen at the same time that their mom really started to need just a little bit of help. There's just little signs here and there that she needed to help. She was still very active. She went to the senior center. I think she was going probably 2 or 3 times a week. Special event would happen. She'd get all dressed up and go to that. But still, there was just little stuff that only the people that were really closest to her started to realize that, whoa, there's changes happening. Then she fell. She fell and she broke her wrist. Little self-disclosure here. A couple of years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, I thought I was really cool and was trying to recapture my youth and decided to take up a new hobby, skateboarding. Don't do it after the age of 40. So I fell and I broke my wrist. I came home holding onto my wrist in a lot of pain, and my wife looked at me and said, "You're an idiot." And I knew I was. The very first thought that I had when I was laying on the pavement was, my wife is going to kill me. And then it was, ow. I drove myself to the urgent care. They put a splint on it, did x-rays. They said, yep, it's broken. That night, we had plans to go out to Monster Truck Jam with some of our closest friends that we hadn't seen in a while. And I said, I'm still going. I got pain meds. I'm going to be fine. I went. I actually drove to that as well. And I recovered from it. A couple of months in a little pesky little sling, not that big a deal for me. For this woman that fell and fractured her wrist, she was already starting to have problems walking. She was starting to have problems doing little things around the house, being able to cook for herself, being able to pull out a heavy pot, something that she loved to do. She loved to cook. And she was already starting to struggle in those areas. Wrist injury, devastating for her, life-changing. Simple little wrist injury. And the family all kind of rallied. It was at this point in time that they reached out to me and said, we need some help. And they brought me in, and I asked the older woman, hey, what do you want? She said, I want you all out of my house. I want my life back. The daughters had tried to all fill in. They knew that she needed round-the-clock 24-hour help. So they all tried to fill in, everybody kind of took what shifts they could. Several of them were still working, so they had to balance it out with work and other responsibilities. And after just 3 or 4 days, the other thing it did is it put all of them under the same roof again. So they had gotten to the point, and a lot of families do this too, they kind of get to the point where they space themselves out a little bit. I love my sister to death, I'll do anything for her, but I'm A-okay not living right next door to her. I can call my sister once a week and we're good. If we were living under the same roof, we'd probably kill each other. So families kind of spaced themselves out. So here a crisis came up and everybody all under the same roof again, being forced to interact, being forced to think of bigger issues. What happens if this is bigger? What happens if mom needs a lot more help? And at the same time, mom was pretty resistant to any sort of help. So we brought in just short-term care. I posed it as a short-term solution, kept focusing on, you're gonna heal from this, couple of months, 2 or 3 months, this is all just gonna be a dream. So let's just do it for a short period of time, and just bring somebody in to be able to help you out. At that point in time, caregiving agencies were able to do live-ins much, much easier. So called up one of my trusted home care agency friends, said, this is what we need, this is what she's like, we need the perfect caregiver. They were able to provide us with that. And it was just a short period of time. She had care for about 3 months. It healed, the splint came off. She was back to her level of functioning the day before she had the fall, which was still struggling just a little bit. So we asked her, and we actually made the agreement to have the care stay, but just to reduce the hours. So I think we ended up doing something like 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, and then the daughters just kind of filled in here and there. Wasn't enough. None of the daughters were happy with it, but it was at least better than it could have been. So we just started off short-term solution, minimal amount of care. Let's see, what else here? So just kind of look for those little openings to be able to make a change. A big part of this is really knowing when to spring into action. I get a lot of calls. I need help, mom needs help, she needs full-time help, we need to bring that in right away. I go, and it's like, no, not really. When is the right time to move? I get that one a lot. Should we bring in a caregiver or should we just move? That's probably the number one question I get. Concerns about driving. I was running in here right now, throwing my stuff on the table and trying to mop the sweat from my brow, my very large brow. Because I got a call from a niece worried about her aunt's driving. Her aunt has Parkinson's. Her comment to me was, the Parkinson's is really well managed. Oh, okay, great. Some people with Parkinson's can manage very, very well and get along, very well. They follow a very strict regimen and they know the sort of things that they need to do in order to keep themselves functioning at a very high level. She starts to talk about the hallucinations that she's having. She starts to talk about the changes in cognition, and at first kind of sugarcoated it with, yeah, but she's older, so of course you would expect